Hey everyone, welcome back. This is a quick post-production breakdown of my latest spec project, which was a super fun clothing shoot for the brand Bonnie. But yeah, it ended up being a super fun shoot and I was super proud of the final product. You can check that out. It's on my channel right now. So make sure to go give that a watch and then we can talk about how exactly I went about editing this thing. So let's jump right into it. How I start every project, I go into my project setups. I made a quick video on this a couple weeks ago. I always start with a blank resolve project that pretty much has my entire folder set up the way I like it. This is the project, and as you can see, there's already folders in here. They're all empty, but when I start a project, this is exactly what I like to do. I like to have all these folders. Sometimes I have to add more, sometimes I don't need a folder. But at least it gives me a good base to start with. So here it is. Here is my project. Let's see. I've talked about this in plenty of other videos. I'm going to take you to my sequences. As you can see on top here, I have a bunch of different sequences. And this is what I always do for a new project when I am starting out. I like to throw all my footage into one timeline for the purposes of this shoot. We had an interview and some B-roll. I kind of kept those two groups of footage separate, so I had one timeline for all my B-roll selects and one timeline for all my interview selects. So this is that timeline for all the interview. I was able to go through, listen, watch, and then take clips of what I wanted to use, put them on the second track or even the third track if it was super important, and then have all my selects ready for my interview. Doing it this way also helps you to figure out what your story is going to be, having a completely blank timeline for your rough cut, and you can kind of take bits and pieces. One thing that I just sort of found out about Resolve that I've been really liking playing around with is the ability to open up two timelines at once. So as you can see, I can open like a split screen timeline. I don't know the exact term for exactly what this is, but let's just, for example, take this is the timeline for sound here. So yeah, now I have two timelines open at once, whereas before I was copy and pasting things from one timeline to the next and I had to click back and forth. The cool thing about doing it this way is that you can literally just drag and drop. So I'll go onto this timeline. If I think it's important, I can just bring it onto my rough cut. And it's that easy. I also work on my big computer that's behind me sometimes, so having multiple screens is very helpful for this feature. Sometimes when you're just working on a laptop, it can feel a little bit crowded, but it's all personal preference, so totally up to you. But that was a helpful little tidbit that I just learned recently. All right, so taking you through sort of the picture lock version. This is, again, my process for the edit. This is everything that leads up to sending things off to color and to sound. I was fortunate enough to have my buddy Karsten, who was our cinematographer, do all the color on this project. He's a wizard when it comes to Resolve color, as well as my other friend Mark, who is from Germany. He hit me up a couple months back after just seeing a YouTube video of mine and asked to help me out with any projects I had. He is a composer and a sound designer, and after seeing some of his work, I was blown away and brought him on to that Onitsuka Tiger project. If you remember, he did all the sound design on that project, and he wanted to work on this one as well. So I guess to start out this song, this first song is a Kid Cudi song called Surfin' featuring Pharrell Williams. This was one of the references that Malcolm gave me. He really liked the vibe of it. He liked the drums. He liked the kind of tribal kind of feel to it. And that was what I started with for the reference. My only concern with this was that it was copyrighted because it is a Kid Cudi song and Malcolm is going to be using this video to sell his clothes. We didn't want to run into any sort of copyright claims. So we kind of talked about it a little bit, and when Mark came onto the project, he was like, let me give it a crack. So he got right to working on kind of his own version of the song, and that's what we ended up with for the final version. I'll get to that, but let's start a little bit with the beginning here.
All right, let's roll camera speeds.
This, the first two lines are me saying, let's roll camera, and then Carson saying, all right, camera speeds. That was just both of us after the fact. I think I was on vacation and he was back home. We just spoke into our phones and he sent me a voice memo, and that's kind of what we wanted. We didn't need like a super crisp dialogue for that part. I even told Mark to make it sound terrible, make it sound like it's far away. Yeah, so I talked about all the different setups we did. We did handheld, we did tripod, we did different angles, different focal lengths, and had him run through all of those setups with each of his outfits. So for this section, which was the beginning clothing section, I wanted it to sound super fun. The story itself is about Malcolm and what his brand represents, being an outcast. So he's kind of explaining that Bonnie is a French word that means outcast, and how he thought it was weird to be an outcast at first, but when he founded this brand, it was all about finding your true, authentic self and putting that out to the world without any sort of regrets. So that was the whole vibe of the voiceover, and then kind of just threw in B-roll with the words to match it. You kind of just get a feel for these sort of things. I thought it made sense to me that he would be putting on the sweatshirt. Malcolm's jacked, so we had him throw on the sweatshirt, and it just kind of made sense because it's like he's getting ready for the shoot. We transitioned to the sunglasses. This was a big part that he wanted to show because he's coming out with a sunglasses line as well as the hoodies and apparel. We had that. And then, I kind of just like went off vibes for like this flow.
Okay, I used to think it was weird.
You get this little drum section that has the three or four quick hits, and I wanted those to coincide with kind of like our widest shot where he's changing into all three of his outfits in this like match cut. So that is here. I think the only issue that I had with this shot right here, I had to do a little bit of work to this one, which it wasn't that big of a deal. But I'll see if I can kind of explain it. I am by no means a Resolve Fusion wizard, but I had to do a little bit of masking for this one. Since it was this sticks shot, it was the same composition, nothing in the background was changing. It was solely Malcolm walking in with his outfit, walking out, changing, and coming back. I knew I was able to mask him out and just replace the background if anything was off. I didn't notice, Karsten didn't notice, nobody noticed that he had his shoes in the frame on one of the shots. I'll see if I can pull it up here. Yeah, so in this frame, as you can see, we have just Malcolm's Converse hanging out on the side here. It's kind of cool, but also like we wanted it to like not take away from his outfits, and I feel like if there was just like a quick flash of a pair of Converse in the bottom right corner, it would have looked a little funky. So what I ended up doing for that, super easy. All you got to do is pretty much I just took the shot that comes directly after it, duplicate it, put it underneath, and then I was able to just mask him out. I can show you in Fusion exactly what I did. Again, I'm not by no means like a wizard. I just like YouTubed this in like 5 minutes, but Media 2 is kind of like the base layer. That's your background that you want. Media 1 is the outfit that we want to show on top. And then this polygon is literally the mask. So pretty much just cut them out, merge these two, and then that's kind of like the basics of like Fusion. It's all node based, which is like kind of funky and weird. I don't use it a lot, but it was easy to just like quickly mask them out. And I can show you that this is like essentially what it's doing. This was the shot coming right after, but we were able to use that mask and pretty much just hide the Converse in the right. But moving on, next we have this really fun flash effect that I mentioned in previous videos. But essentially what I did for that was in the color tab. So for this effect, I had to do this on the finishing sequence. So After I get the picture lock, that picture lock goes off to sound, off to color. And then once I have a file that is colored, once I have a file that is the final mix, I put those into one final timeline. So that is this timeline here. And to get those like final transitions, that's where you do all your GFX, like on top of that final colored version. So just to take you through that really quickly, pretty much all I did was I took a node and I went into the keyframe section. It's a 6-frame effect, a 6-frame transition. So pretty much all you do is at the end of your first clip where you want the effect to start, you go to the very end and just go in 3 frames, and then you add in a dynamic keyframe. So you do that and then go 3 frames to the last frame of the clip, add another dynamic keyframe, and then all I did was change my exposure. And then all I did to make the effect happen was change my exposure and blow out my highlights. It was pretty simple. It looks pretty cool. It looks like this flash effect. And you can kind of play around with like your levels and whatnot, but my offset here, I just turned it way up to 30, and then I also wanted my highlights to kind of bloom and blow out, so I also messed with my gain a little bit, turned that up to 2 from 0, and then went to the next clip, and I did the exact same thing. So I start at the beginning, make a dynamic keyframe, go 3 frames forward, and then add another dynamic keyframe, and then on that first keyframe you do the effect. So you increase your gain, increase your offset, and then it makes this kind of like gradual highlight bloom come in and out. So went through each clip. It was a little bit tedious, but it made this fun effect. And I think it lent itself well to the kind of like photo shoot, like paparazzi, like flashing camera shutters, all the sounds that were happening in the background that Mark added. The next thing I want to talk about is as he's bringing over his clothes, this collage here. The mantra and the tagline of Bonnie's brand is "We are all outcasts." So I knew I wanted him to say that directly into the camera at some point in the video. And I thought it would be cool to just like do some fun effect to like make it feel a little bit more bizarre. So that's what this was right here, this sort of collage. On the day, we ended up doing, this first shot where he is staring straight into camera. And then we punched in and we did a bunch of different angles of him saying "we are all outcasts." We focused on his mouth, we focused on his eyes, his nose, and had all these angles to mess around with. So this was sort of fun for me to kind of just get in there. And I ended up making a compound clip, which is really easy to do in Resolve. I ended up having like 30 layers, 30 tracks of all of these clips, and it was a bit much to handle, so I ended up just making a compound clip, which all you do is, just imagine this right here is what I'm trying to make a compound clip. You right click and new compound clip, and what you can do is open that into a new timeline, and yeah, this is the effect here. So it starts out with just a clean plate of him saying "we are all outcasts," and each one of these things kind of pops in at a different time. We have a punched in angle of his eyes, a lot of eyes. We have his mouth, and then each one of these I kind of like had come in at just like a different frame, just so it felt like it was like, I don't know, trickling in or something. Yeah, this was really fun to play around with. I just kind of like threw stuff wherever it looked cool. Moving on from that, this next portion, we originally shot a bunch of stuff outside. I kind of mentioned it. We had some really fun stuff at the park with Malcolm and his friends. And as much as I wanted to use that stuff, it just didn't quite fit with the short story that we were trying to tell about being an outcast. The reason for shooting this was because Bonnie is also about bringing outcasts together. That's why the brand itself exists. And we wanted to tell that part of the story, but it was just a little bit too much, and I don't think it quite fit. So, in an edit, that's sometimes like what you have to do. You have to make hard decisions about cutting footage. And that's never fun to do because, when you shoot something and it looks sick, you want to keep everything. But if it doesn't serve the story, then, it's something that you have to get rid of. So that was a decision we made for this footage. Malcolm is still going to use all this footage, release it on his Instagram and whatnot. So it's not going to completely go to waste. But this next section, we wanted to lead into a much more slow and peaceful and lonely feeling section about, talking about Malcolm being an outcast and seeing him as an outcast in his space, but that's like where he thrives, where he's the most creative. So originally I had this shot kind of play out, but it was a really long shot of him just looking into the camera. I ended up putting some VHS-esque footage over that as he's talking about fear, as he's talking about, the future's not always clear. It can be foggy. So having kind of shots of him fiddling with his hands, this is all happening while we're interviewing him for the actual shoot. So it's almost like this more BTS feel. And I was okay with that because, in the photo shoot part, it was supposed to feel like sort of BTS-y. That ended up working out really, really well. This shot was actually flipped, I believe. So this was the original shot. This is what it looked like. But I knew the next shot was a frame of him looking down from left to right. So I wanted to like match cut those. And this just seemed like the perfect opportunity to quickly just flip it around. I don't think, it's that big of a deal, but it just adds a little bit to the flow and the motion and just leads your eye a little bit better, in my opinion. So I used another film flash to get us out of this section and into the next one, which is his office. As he is looking down, you don't really know what he's looking at. He could be contemplating life. He could be, struggling with something. He's talking about the fear that he has and all this stuff and how sometimes it's scary. But you quickly realize that as you punch out, he's kind of in his own space doing what he loves the most, which is like designing and being creative. So we punch out. Quick little note on this shot here. This was like super fun to do. Colin kind of went crazy on all of the production design elements. We threw stuff all over his desk and just made it look like a designer kind of messy feeling desk. There's also a little Easter egg in here. I don't know if anybody caught it, but shout out to my man, Tristan, T-Money's Muscle Mud. If anybody knows what that is, go check out the I Think I'm Sick behind the scenes documentary on Danny Gaversa's channel. So yeah, little Easter egg in there. I don't know if anybody caught it, but this shot, we did this like POV rig of the Apple Pencil. We did a little bit of him writing, but again, it was one of those things where you just have to serve the story, and it didn't exactly fit. It was this like really high motion, kind of like high energy shot that we were getting as he's like writing on his iPad. It didn't quite fit with the vibe of the sequence, so unfortunately had to cut that part. I can show it to you because it was just really cool, like writing on the iPad. Boom. Oh, sweet. Yeah, so again, it was sweet. It just like didn't quite fit with this sequence. I think that pretty much brings us to the close of this thing. I punch back out Malcolm working on his iPad now, and then we see the final hero frame, which is back in the studio. That pretty much wraps up the edit. This, again, is getting us to a picture lock. So the sound's not final, the music isn't final. All the things that I send out to sound, I will cover in another video. I have like a specific zip file that I put together for whoever my sound designer or composer is. But yeah, I think that about wraps things up for this week. I think it'd be really fun, like I mentioned, to talk to Mark from Germany about his workflow on doing sound design, composing. So maybe we'll do that in the next couple of weeks. But for now, I appreciate you guys watching. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, and that feels really cool. I, didn't have any expectations for this channel. And I talked about, literally, I think it was last week, we hit 900, and that's really cool too. I have a lot of really amazing mentors in this space, and the overwhelming advice has been to not focus on the numbers and don't worry too much, about where things are at, and try not to do that, but still feels a little bit cool to hit the 1K. So I appreciate all the support, and I'm looking forward to continuing. I have a lot of really cool stuff planned. I have another shoot coming up, and working on some really exciting things behind the scenes. So I'm excited to share all that with you guys. And I think that's about it for today. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching. And as always, I will see you next time. Peace.